The wind came from the north. It was long and patient, brushing gently against the stones, the tents, the soldiers' woolen cloaks. Night had slowly settled over this distant border garrison of the Roman Empire. The sun was long gone, and the sky had taken on a deep navy blue. The stars seemed farther away than ever, and quieter. Titus was sitting by the fire. The crackling of the embers was steady. Flames rose, then faded, then flared again, as if breathing. Titus stretched his hands toward the fire. The cold between his fingers slowly loosened its grip. He had made this gesture countless times, yet he still watched it carefully, as if it were the first. Nights were always like this, long, heavy, and calm. In the garrison, conversations dwindled. Guard changes were done in whispers. Footsteps pressed softly into the earth. No one was eager to break the silence, because it lifted the weight of the day and lightened the heart. Titus lifted his head and looked at the sky. He didn't count the stars. He never did. Looking at them was enough. He had done the same back in Rome. As a child, he would sit beside his mother and imagine they were looking at the same stars. Back then, the world had been smaller. Rome meant home. Home meant warm stone walls and the smell of bread rising at evening meals. Now Rome was a thought, distant, yet alive. He set his leather pouch on the stone beside the fire and took out a small wax tablet and his stylus. He always carried them with him. Writing had become part of his watch, not an order, but a habit. No one had asked him to write letters, yet he did, because writing slowed time. He placed the tablet on his knees and sat for a while without doing anything. The sound of the fire, the murmur of the wind, the distant footsteps of a sentry, they blended together into a single rhythm. Titus matched his breathing to it, deep, calm, steady. Then he began to write. Mother, he etched into the wax. The letters appeared slowly. Their neatness did not matter. Being legible was enough. The nights here are long, cold, but quiet. He paused, looked at the fire, watched the empty spaces between the flames. If he were in Rome, he would be in the courtyard at this hour, feeling the cool stone beneath his feet. His mother would be inside, sitting by the lamplight, perhaps mending something. The thought left a gentle weight in his chest. My duty is not heavy, he continued. The days resemble one another. We rise in the morning, check our weapons, and then we wait. Waiting, that was the essence of being a soldier on the frontier. Great battles were rare. The real task was waiting. Watching the horizon, feeling the direction of the wind, listening to silence. Titus had realized that he liked this. At first it had been difficult. The crowds of Rome, the noise, the marketplaces, all left behind. But in time, he understood how this stillness seeped into a person. Thoughts were clearer here. Memories came more slowly. Sometimes I sit by the fire, he wrote, and think of Rome. After writing this sentence, he stopped, closed his eyes. The warmth of the fire was on his face, the cool wind on the back of his neck. Between two opposites, he stood in balance, just like life. The stone walls of the garrison held the cold through the night, but the fire resisted it. For Titus, the fire reminded him of Rome. The hearth at home, the morning fire his mother lit, the browned marks on fresh bread. He opened his eyes and continued writing. The people here are quiet. Everyone is alone with their own thoughts. That was true. The soldiers were together by day, but at night each was a little alone. Loneliness was not frightening. It was familiar. Titus had accepted it. Loneliness allowed a person to listen to himself. When he finished the line, he smoothed the surface of the tablet lightly. He was not finished, but he was in no hurry. Time was here. It was not running away. He looked at the stones by the fire. They were old. Who knew how many soldiers, over how many nights had sat here? Who knew how many had thought of Rome? The thought calmed him. Knowing he was not alone gave him strength. The changing of the guard was approaching. A horn sounded in the distance, short and soft. Titus did not rise. It was not his turn yet. He only wrapped his cloak a little tighter around himself. Rome was no longer just a city to him. Rome had become a feeling, like the warmth of the fire, distant but perceptible. Titus took a deep breath and looked at the sky again. The stars were still there, unchanged. That was a good thing. He picked up the tablet again. He would keep writing, because as he wrote, the night softened. And as the night softened, so did his heart. The fire shrank a little more. The flames were lower now, heavier in their movement. Titus added a piece of wood to the fire. It stayed silent at first, then slowly began to crackle. The sound blended into the night, not loud, not disturbing, as if the night had been waiting for it. As the sentries changed places, the faint sound of metal touching metal could be heard. Armor creaked. Sandals brushed softly against stone. Titus knew these sounds well. They were as regular as the fire. Everything followed an order. This order soothed the mind. Titus sat again, drawing his knees beneath his cloak. The cold no longer reached his bones. The fire was close enough. His breathing slowed. His thoughts slowed with it. Nights in Rome were different. There, sounds never truly ended. Distant voices, late footsteps, doors closing. But here on the frontier, the night was quiet. The silence did not echo in the ears. It lived inside. When Titus first noticed this, it had unsettled him. He had not known what to do with silence. But over time, he understood that silence asked for nothing. It simply was. He took the tablet again. His fingers rested on the wax. He wanted to continue writing, but he was not in a hurry. Writing was not a task. It was a journey. Sometimes, he etched slowly, "When the wind blows, I remember your voice." After writing this, he stopped. His mother's voice surfaced gently in his mind. It was not harsh. It did not command. It was calm and steady. As a child, he had fallen asleep to that voice. Now he found it in the wind. The wind moved between the tents. The fabric rippled softly. Titus closed his eyes. He drew the cold air into his lungs. His chest rose as he inhaled, fell slowly as he exhaled. He repeated the motion deliberately. When the body calmed, the mind followed. Beyond the garrison lay darkness, forests, hills, unknown paths. But tonight the darkness was not frightening. It too was quiet. It too was waiting. Titus remembered his first day here. After a long march, he had stood before these stone walls. His feet ached. His shoulders were tired. But the sky had been the same sky as Rome's. In that moment, he had felt some of his tension ease. "Time moves differently here," he wrote. "The days are long, the nights even longer. Time. In Rome, time was fast. Everyone was rushing somewhere. Here, time walked alongside you. No one chased it. And that had been good for Titus. The firelight fell across his face. His shadow stretched along the stone wall. It was still. He watched it and thought that his shadow, like himself, was resting. The thought brought a faint smile to his face. When his turn for watch approached, a soldier came to him and gave a brief salute. They did not speak. There was no need. Titus rose, took his spear. His steps were heavy but steady. When he climbed onto the wall, he looked down. The darkness was deep and calm. Nothing moved in the distance. That was good. There was no danger, only night. While standing watch, thoughts slowed even more. Eyes adjusted to the dark, ears became alert to the smallest sound. But this alertness was not tension. It was awareness. Titus felt his breathing align with this awareness. Each breath made him calmer. His shoulders loosened, his jaw relaxed. He thought of Rome, its streets, stone roads, the Forum. But even these thoughts were quiet. They were not loud. It was as if the memories themselves had adapted to the rhythm of the night. When his watch ended, he nodded to the soldier who replaced him and climbed down. The fire was still burning. The flames were smaller now, but not extinguished. Titus sat beside it again. He took the tablet and wrote one last sentence. "When I return home," he etched, "I will remember these nights." With that, he closed the tablet. The writing was finished. He did not know whether the letter would ever reach its destination. But writing was enough. Writing gave him hope. Titus wrapped himself in his cloak and leaned his head back slightly. The warmth of the fire brushed his face. His eyelids grew heavy. Sleep did not come, but rest did, and that was enough. The night continued, quiet, patient, and calm. The fire was now almost nothing but embers. The flames no longer rose. They only cast a red glow. This light did not illuminate the night. It merely reminded it of its presence. Titus liked this state. Everything was as it should be, neither too much nor too little. The wind slowed. The tents no longer stirred. The garrison seemed to settle as if taking a deep breath. Sentries were in place. The walls were strong. The night was calm. This order formed an order in Titus's mind as well. He shifted his position slightly, leaning his back against the stone wall. The stone was cold, but not unpleasant. It reminded his body where it was. He stretched out his legs and gently moved his toes. Every movement was deliberate and slow. He listened to his body. His shoulders were loose, his neck relaxed. His breathing was deep and calm. With each inhale, his chest rose softly. With each exhale, it grew heavier. It was as if his body was settling, not into the stones, but into the night. Titus closed his eyes. Darkness did not come at once. First, the red of the fire appeared behind his eyelids. Then it slowly faded. What remained was silence. But this silence was not empty. It held memories. He remembered his mother's hands, rough but warm, hands that had stroked his head, smoothed his hair when he was a child. As he thought of them, he felt the muscles in his forehead relax. His jaw loosened a little more. He thought of their house in Rome, the stone walls, the narrow door, the small courtyard, the midday sun falling into the courtyard, the lengthening of shadows in the late afternoon. These images were not sharp, but they did not need to be. Feeling them was enough. There was a connection between this night and the nights in Rome. The same stars, the same sky. The thought gave Titus a deep sense of trust. The world did not change. Only people moved within it. He inhaled, slowly exhaled. A final crackle came from the fire. Then silence again. Even that sound had not broken the night. It had merely accompanied it. Titus thought of the letter he had written. He imagined his mother reading it, holding the wax tablet under the lamplight, tracing the letters slowly, perhaps pausing to think, perhaps smiling. The thought left a warmth in his chest, different from the fire's warmth, deeper, more inward. He did not feel time passing, because time no longer mattered. The night moved in its own rhythm, and Titus had attuned himself to it. A distant owl called once. Then silence returned. Titus heard the sound, but did not dwell on it. It came and went like thoughts. His eyelids grew heavier still. He did not force them open, nor did he force them closed. He simply allowed them to remain where they were. His body was preparing to rest. Breathe in, slowly breathe out. This simple motion explained everything well enough. Titus knew that Rome was no longer just a place. Rome was a feeling, safety, warmth, and the idea of return. That feeling was with him wherever he was. The night enveloped the soldier standing watch on the frontier, but the embrace was not tight. It was gentle, accepting. As Titus sat on the stone beside the fire, his thoughts fell silent one by one. What remained was only breath, and the breath was in harmony with the night. Morning did not arrive suddenly on the frontier. Light did not open like a door. It came slowly, almost without announcing itself. When Titus woke, the first thing he felt was the cold. But it was not the sharp cold of the night. It was softer, like the last trace left behind as night withdrew. He pulled his cloak a little tighter around his shoulders. Before opening his eyes, he listened to his breathing for a while. The garrison was not fully awake yet. Some soldiers were moving, but the sounds were still muted. Morning asked the same thing of everyone, slowness. Titus opened his eyes. The sky was a pale gray, neither dark nor bright. He liked these hours because everything was in its place, yet nothing was in a hurry. He stood up. His body felt heavy, but the weight was not unpleasant. It was as if the thoughts he hadn't carried during the night were now slowly returning. He stretched his shoulders, then let them drop. He turned his neck gently. Small sounds from his bones blended into the silence. The fire had long gone out. Only ash remained. Titus looked at it. It was the sign that night had ended, but he did not rush. Everything had its own time. The morning routine was clear. Weapon inspection, a short meal, then waiting. He took his weapon in his hands. The metal was cold but familiar. He ran his fingers along the shaft of the spear. Small cracks, worn places, everything was there. This weapon had been in the same place with him for days now, like a quiet companion. He stepped into the courtyard of the garrison. The stone ground had held on to the night's cold. He felt the chill through his sandals. That sensation fully woke him. The other soldiers were gathering slowly. No one spoke loudly. There was no need. Everyone knew what to do. That knowledge could be shared without words. He took a piece of bread. It was hard but fresh. He broke off a small bite and chewed slowly. He did not hurry when he swallowed. Breakfast was not for filling oneself. It was for beginning the day. The sky brightened a little more. Gray turned into pale blue. Light slid over the walls and touched the shadows. Titus watched this change because it was the same every day. And that sameness gave a person a sense of safety. Mornings in Rome were different, louder, faster. But here, morning seemed to listen to everyone. It advanced only as much as one was ready. Titus sat near the wall and leaned his back against the stones. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked toward the horizon. In the distance, the mist had not yet lifted. Earth and sky blended together. It was unclear where one ended and the other began. This uncertainty did not trouble him. Living on the frontier meant becoming used to that. Not everything needed to be clear. He took a breath, deep, calm. The morning wind was light. It touched his face, cold, but alive. Titus thought that this wind must also pass through Rome. Perhaps the same wind on the same morning brushed against his mother's door. The thought softened something inside him. Time passed, but it was not felt. Here, time did not announce its steps. The garrison was fully awake now, yet it remained quiet. This silence did not belong to the night. It was the silence of day, clearer, brighter. Titus took out his tablet, not to write, just to hold it. The smoothness of the wax calmed his fingers. He did not have to write. Thinking was enough. Thoughts came, but they were not fast. They did not push one another. They arrived in order. Rome, home, the night fire, his mother's voice. All were there, but none were heavy. Titus realized what life on the frontier had taught him. How to wait, how not to rush, how not everything needed to happen at once. This realization spread through his mind like a wave, then settled. The sun rose a little higher. The shadows of the walls shortened. The day had begun. But for Titus, the day had already started, because he was still carrying the calm left behind by the night. As the day went on, the light softened. The sun did not climb straight overhead. It seemed to move lower here on the frontier. Even the way the light struck the stone walls was different. Not harsh, but diffuse. Shadows were not sharp. Everything was only as distinct as it needed to be. Titus stood at his post, on the wall, at his assigned point. He looked down toward the plains. The land was still. The wind occasionally stirred the tall grass, then settled again. Waiting had begun once more. But this waiting was not empty. Waiting here was a state of being. While waiting, a person noticed himself, his thoughts, his body, his breath. Titus felt the stones beneath his feet. Each stone was shaped differently. Some were smooth, others slightly rough. Knowing these differences anchored him in the present moment. A bird crossed the sky, silently. Its wing beats were barely audible. Titus followed it with his eyes. As it moved farther away, it grew smaller and then disappeared completely. but the sky did not change. He liked that thought. In Rome, people came and went. Sounds rose and fell. But here, nature was more constant. People were only small movements within it. There was no need to speak while on watch. There was little to say. Watching was enough. Listening, too. Titus became aware of his breathing again. It was deep as it had been in the morning, but now it was more settled. His chest rose and fell in the same rhythm with every breath. This regularity calmed him without his noticing. As time passed, his mind grew simpler. No great thoughts arrived. No worries came knocking. There were only small, gentle thoughts. His mother doing simple tasks at home, the sound of a door opening, footsteps on stone. These thoughts took shape in his mind not as clear images but as feelings. They did not need to be precise. When his watch ended, Titus climbed down and walked toward the courtyard. His steps were heavy but not tired. He did not hurry. There was no reason to. Midday meal was simple. Some bread, some water. This simplicity did not burden the body. It lightened it. When Titus finished eating, he did not feel weighed down. He liked that. In a corner of the garrison, he found a shaded spot and sat there. The shade was cool but not cold. This balance between warmth and coolness felt like the essence of life on the frontier. He took out his tablet, this time not to write, but simply to look at it. He noticed the old scratches on its surface. The traces of lines written before were still there. Each mark was a thought from the past. Titus did not want to erase any of them, because each one had brought him here. He half closed his eyes. He did not fall asleep, but he was not fully awake either. This in-between state was one of his favorites. Thoughts were free, but not uncontrolled. From far away came the sound of metal, a soldier setting down his weapon. The sound came and went. It did not echo in Titus's mind. The sun slowly began to lean westward. The light changed. The shadow shifted. Time's passage could only be understood through this change. Titus felt evening approaching. Evening was a release on the frontier, the sign that the day was ending. And night, as always, would come again. The thought filled him with peace. He thought of Rome once more, but this time the longing was not heavy. There was more acceptance than yearning. Rome was there. He was here. And for a while both would remain so. That thought created a sense of balance within him. The wind grew a little cooler. Evening was close. The sun sank slowly. As it neared the horizon, its light changed. First yellow, then a pale orange. This color lingered on the stone walls for a long time, as if it did not want to hurry. Titus watched the change. The end of the day on the frontier was always calm. No one shouted. No one ran. The day closed quietly. The evening routine began. A few soldiers carried wood. A place was prepared for the fire. Titus joined them. The wood was set down, forming a small, orderly pile. Everything was measured. There was no excess. When the fire was lit, smoke rose first, thin and light. Then flames appeared. The light of day slowly gave way to the light of fire. This transition always felt familiar to Titus. The shift from day to night was never abrupt here. They sat around the fire. No long conversations followed. A few short sentences, a few nods. That was enough. Silence found its place again. Titus looked into the fire. The flames were livelier than in the morning, but not as deep as at night. The evening fire was for transition, to let go of the day's weight, to prepare for night. He stretched his hands toward the fire. Warmth spread across his palms. He felt his fingers loosen. His shoulders dropped a little more. The small tensions he had carried through the day began to dissolve beside the fire. The sky darkened. Blue turned to deep navy. The first stars appeared. When Titus noticed them, a quiet sense of relief passed through him. The stars were always there. They were the sign that the day was truly over. Evening meal was simple again, but anything eaten beside a warm fire felt more satisfying. Titus took his bites slowly, chewed, swallowed. Every movement was deliberate. After the meal, no one stood up right away. They sat a little longer around the fire, watching the movement of the flames. This was not thinking, it was simply looking. Titus thought of the moments that had passed through the day, the gray light of morning, the silent waiting at midday, the gentle arrival of evening. All were connected. The day felt like a whole with a beginning and an end. This sense of wholeness relaxed him. He thought of Rome again, but this time it did not feel distant. Rome was like another room, its door closed, but known. One day it would open. That knowledge was enough. The wind blew again, but not harshly. It bent the flames slightly, then let them go. Titus felt the coolness on his face. It was the sign of night approaching. The watch lists were prepared. Titus's turn was close to night, but the thought did not weigh on him. Night watch was familiar now. It was no longer frightening. Before rising from the fire, he lingered a little longer, as if hurrying would make the moment vanish. But he did not hurry. Nothing escaped here. He stood up and pulled his cloak over his shoulders. He stepped away from the fire, though its warmth stayed with him. That warmth walked with him. Night was about to fully settle. Titus looked at the sky one last time. The stars were clearer now. The moon had not yet risen. This darkness was temporary. There was a calm inside him. The day had ended. Night was beginning, and everything was as it should be. Night came, but it did not change the silence of the frontier. It only deepened it. The sky was now completely dark. The stars appeared brighter than on previous nights, as if the cold air carried their light more clearly. Titus cast a brief glance at the sky as he walked along the wall toward his post. The glance did not last long, but it was enough. He did not count his steps. There was no need. Walking here was something done without thought. His feet knew the way. When he reached his post, he stopped. He rested his spear against the ground and tucked his hands under his cloak. The cold had returned with the night, but it was familiar, not harsh. The frontier's night did not push a person away. It took them in. Titus let his eyes adjust to the darkness. At first, nothing could be distinguished. Then slowly, shapes emerged. The line of the land, the silhouette of the horizon. Far away, shadows that did not move. This view was nearly the same every night, and that sameness eased his mind. There were no surprises. The unknown was not frightening. It was only the known. He breathed, slowly, deeply. Thoughts came differently during night watches, softer, heavier. The clarity of day was absent, but in its place there was acceptance. He thought of Rome, not the streets this time, not the sounds, more the feelings. The feeling of being home, the feeling of knowing a door was closed, the feeling of someone being in another room. These feelings did not form clear images in his mind, but that was unnecessary. They were already there. The wind blew lightly. A small metal piece at the tip of his spear made a faint sound. Titus heard it but did not dwell on it. The sound came and went. Night did not hold onto thoughts. It let them go. For a moment he felt as if he were not on the frontier, as if he were elsewhere. But the sense of absence was not frightening. It was light, as if his body was here, but his mind had retreated to rest. He liked this state. His eyelids grew heavy, but he did not close them, nor did he keep them fully open. He simply let them be. The shapes blurred. The darkness softened. Time was not measured during watch. No one knew how much had passed. Only changes were noticed, a slight increase in cold, the wind shifting, the stars moving. When Titus noticed the stars had shifted slightly, he understood that time had passed. But this knowledge did not hurry him. The night was still his. He imagined his mother receiving a letter, maybe the next day, maybe a week later, maybe even later. But the uncertainty no longer bothered him. He had written. Writing had shortened the distance. This thought created a gentle expansion in his chest. His breath deepened a little more. Rome was no longer only longing. Rome had become waiting. And waiting was something learned on the frontier. Night deepened. Titus's mind grew simpler. Thoughts withdrew one by one, leaving only the sense of being. Feet on stone, cold brushing against his face, the rhythm of his breath. These were enough. After a while, a faint light appeared in the distance. The moon rose slowly. The light did not dispel the darkness. It merely added another layer. Titus watched the moon. It did not hurry. Its rise took time. This slowness suited the night perfectly. A thought arose within him, quiet and calm. Everything is in its place. He did not hold on to the thought. He merely noticed it and then let it go. Night flowed slowly around a soldier on duty at the frontier. As night deepened, the silence of the frontier grew. The wind slowed, then almost stopped. No stone moved, no trees rustled. It was as if the world was holding its breath. Titus shifted slightly where he sat. He tilted his head. His eyes sank into the darkness. But the darkness was not empty. He knew everything on the frontier was in its place. Every stone, every shadow, every breath. Thoughts slowed, like small light clouds drifting through the mind, sometimes touching, sometimes passing quietly. None hurried, none lingered. Titus's breath accompanied the silence. With each inhale, his chest rose lightly. With each exhale, it fell slowly. This rhythm was fully in tune with the night. Time could no longer be measured. It simply existed. Memories appeared before his eyes, but they were not clear. Only feelings remained. Rome, his mother's voice, childhood, the small courtyard of their home. They came and went like a gentle mist. The moon rose slowly in the sky. Its light spilled softly over the stone walls. It did not want to break the night. It simply was there. Titus noticed it, but did not stare. He only felt it. A moment arrived without time. Night, the frontier, and the stars came together. Titus felt his own presence in this union. No past, no future existed. Only this moment, only breath, only stones, only the slow warmth of fire. Thoughts fell silent. Only a faint peace remained. His eyelids grew heavier. He leaned his head more against the stone wall. His shoulders relaxed, his legs softened. His hands stayed warm and still beneath his cloak. He remembered the sound of a bird, but it was far away now. Only its echo remained. Titus listened, then let it go. Nothing had to be held. Nothing had to be controlled. Rome was no longer far nor close. It simply existed, only as a feeling. A frontier watchman in harmony with the night. And a thought came lightly. Everything is in its place. I am here, and everything is enough. Titus held it, but not tightly. It simply was. The feeling spread like a warm wave across his chest. Slowly it reached every part of his body, even the small stones. The cold stones no longer bothered him. It was as if the stones and his body were listening to the night together. Every breath, every posture, every silence, all in harmony. His eyelids closed fully. But his mind remained awake. It only watched. It only felt. Night deepened. The frontier was fully immersed in silence. The stone walls stood like black silhouettes under the stars. The air was cool, but not uncomfortable. Titus had laid his spear beside him and sat on the stone. There was no weight in his body, only peace. The moon rose slowly. Its light was soft, gentle. Shadows shifted lightly over the walls. Titus watched, but did not focus. It simply was. He simply felt. The night wind blew lightly. It stirred leaves, brushed small stones, then dissolved into silence. These sounds created a rhythm within Titus, in tune with his breath, with his heartbeat. And this rhythm was enough to carry the night. He thought of Rome, but longing no longer weighed on him. Rome had become a feeling. Home, safety, warmth. These were now part of the feeling he carried with him. He closed his eyes, but his mind was not empty. Memories danced silently. They did not break the night. They only accompanied it. Every moment was light. Every moment was enough. He breathed, slowly, deeply, out, slowly, evenly. These breaths reminded him that time no longer mattered. Day and night, past and future, all existed here. Only with his breath. Titus leaned his head back a little more. The hardness of the stone did not bother him. His body and the stone were now in the same place. There was harmony. There was peace. The stars in the sky did not change, but Titus perceived them differently. Each one seemed a confidant, a watcher, a guide, aligned with his body, his mind, and the rhythm of the night. Silent, simply present. Days, weeks, roam. None of it mattered anymore. Only the moment existed. Only the breath existed. Only being existed. Titus's eyelids closed fully. His body was relaxed. His mind lingered between gentle dream and waking. And the frontier carried him safely in the arms of the night. One final thought passed through his mind. Everything is in its place. I am here, and everything is enough. And the night wrapped Titus and the entire frontier garrison slowly, safely, and peacefully. The stones, the wind, the faint remnants of fire, all in the same rhythm, in harmony, infinite silence and security.